Let me go to Minister Paulo Guedes, and you have a lot of challenges in Brazil, which is one of the most powerful economies, país más grande do mundo. We need Brazil to grow, and I would like to ask you, Brazil has not been growing enough and has this tremendous challenge of reforms and the pensions particularly. So can you tell us a little bit, Minister, what are the things that this government of President Bolsonaro is trying to gear to get more investment, to open up, to, I hope, to seal the deal, Mercosur, Europe? There's so many things on your plate.
Certainly.
Different from Argentina, I must say, but also very challenging. Minister, please.
Well, Brazil was once, by some decades, the fastest growing economy in the world. Brazil used to grow faster than China, than Korea, than Japan. Japan was number 2. For 2, 3, 4 decades, like Argentina was once the 5th largest, highest per capita income in the world. Somehow we lost our way. And in the Brazilian case, tracking just the last 40 years, you can see public expenditures as a ratio of GDP coming from 18% under the last 2 military governments, when 18% at the end of the military government was already 22, 23. Then the civilian governments, one after the other, 30%, 36, 40, 45%. So you saw not only a lot of misfunctionings, because when you're spending too much, for instance, in the Geisel government, which was the one before the last of the military government, he was recycling petrodollars and spending a lot through state companies. So our history of a sequence of exchange rate crises began there. Then the last military government with Figueiredo, it was the threat of hyperinflation. Inflation came from 30%, 40%, 100% to 200%. And then 2-3 years stable, if you could imagine something like that, stable around 200% inflation. All the economy indexed, wages, rents, everything indexed. Then the civilian government, first elections, and then we went to hyperinflation, 5,000%. And then we began fighting symptoms of inflation instead of fighting the underlying phenomena. We began attacking symptoms. We have frozen prices, then we froze financial assets. Then eventually we learned the importance of the central bank, of floating rates. But still, because public expenditures was uncontrollable, we just switched inflationary finance for a snowball indebtedness. Then internal debt came from 20, 30% of GDP to almost 80% of GDP, which is where we are now. And then at the end of these 40 years, what we saw with this uncontrollable expansion of public spending, the corruption of a democratic system, and economic stagnation. So it is not something that happened suddenly to Brazil. Brazil was growing 7.3, 7.4 average for 2, 3, 4 decades. Then we decelerated to 5% at the end of military government. Then we began 2, 2.5 for 15, 20 years. And then we collapsed to 0 and eventually minus 3%, minus 3%. So it is a long story. I compared it to harpooned a whale, big whale, a giant dimension. It was a continent. It's a continental dimension economy with natural resources, with everything. And then we harpooned it with very high interest rates, with hyperinflation, with a lot of bureaucracy, high taxes. Eventually, you kill the whale. So we collapsed. And I'm using, just to simplify the situation, even to my president, to the popular opinion in Brazil, first year, we will remove 1 or 2 harpoons. It will grow 1%. Second year, we keep removing harpoons. It will move better, 2%. Third year, 3%. Last year, 4%. Well, first year was 1.2. And this year, looks like it's 2.5. So even higher than what I thought at the beginning. So we're beginning to remove the harpoons, the economy is beginning to move, and we believe we will be contributing in this next 2, 3, 4 years, certainly to the growth of the region. We began attacking the number one expenditures, Social Security. It was exponential, the increase. And even worse, a factory of privileges, because they were unequal. If you were a public employee, not only you have stability of employment, not only you have higher wages, but you also have 6, 7, 8, 10 times more than the usual private sector retirement. So attacking this factory of privileges frontally put 1 million people in each capital of Brazil, of the Brazilian states. We have like 10, 12 states whose capitals have more than 1 million inhabitants. Rio de Janeiro is 10 million, São Paulo 15 million, Belo Horizonte is 3 million, Recife. So it's a continental dimension country with big cities. And then you saw 1 million people in each one of these capitals on the street asking for a social security reform on behalf of their children, of the future generations. I posed the problem. I said, listen, our lack of courage will destroy the retirement opportunities for everybody and will jeopardize our children. Either we face the problem now or the thing will derail. And then people went to the street asking for the Social Security, which was amazing. You see, even in countries like France today, they don't have political support to make the change.
Sure.
And in Brazil, everybody there. So the maturity of the thing is impressive. So the Congress approved the first reform. Then we attacked second largest expenditure. So not only the government was spending too much, 45% of GDP, but it was a low quality expenditures. Privileges in Social Security, one. Second one, interest payments on debt.